Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to episode 13 of Chess Basics, things every chess player ought to know. Today we're going to start looking at mating patterns. And we're going to look at a famous mate to begin with called Le Gal's mate. And first of all, Le Gal, Francois Antoine de Le Gal, was a famous French chess player from the 18th century and probably the best chess player in the world. He's most well known today for being the teacher of Philidor, who defeated him in a match in 1755 and was thereafter considered the strongest chess player of his day. A case of the pupil defeating the master. But before that, de Le Gal was considered the strongest player in France and probably the whole world. He was the leading player at the Café de la Régence in Paris, which was the center of chess culture in the 18th century. Now, I'm getting the information for this game from a website called Edward Winter's Chess Notes. I'll leave a pointer in the description to that website. It's really an excellent source for all kinds of historical information about chess. And because there's actually several versions of this game floating around which are incorrect. But this one, based on a book that was printed in 1835, appears to be the correct version of the game. And notice that white is playing without a rook. So this is a casual game between de Le Gal and a friend, Saint-Bris, and he's playing it at rook odds, so that indicates that his opponent is probably not the best chess player in the world. And it's a casual game, so he's playing in a somewhat risky fashion, which you'll see in a minute. First of all, development proceeds normally. Up until this point, the bishop coming out here is maybe a little early. It's more common to develop this knight first, which would help defend the bishop on that square. But that's still no reason to play a move like this. Knight takes e5. And his opponent has to be thinking, oh, what the heck is going on? He's going to just let me take his queen here. And that's what Le Gal is banking on. He's banking on his opponent's greed here, overcoming his better sense. And indeed, he snatches up the queen, and Le Gal finishes the game off very elegantly with two moves. You might want to pause the video for a second here and see if you can find them. It's really a cute mate. And if you need more time to think about it, go ahead and pause the video now, and I'm going to give the answer. What's happened is that white has developed all his pieces into excellent attacking positions, whereas black's defensive pieces have been distracted by things like grabbing material. He starts it off with bishop takes f7 check, and the king only has one square he can move to, and the knight is guarding these squares, and his way to the right and left is blocked by his own pieces, so he has to come forward. And then the final move, knight d5, and that's checkmate. Notice the knight is covering those squares, this knight is covering these squares, and the bishop is covering these squares. So all the available squares are taken, and the ones that aren't covered by white's pieces are blocked by his own pieces, and so the king is just checkmated right there in the center of his own camp. So that's how it ended. Let's back up a little bit. There's a little nuance here. Like I said, he was playing a risky kind of chess here. He's just banking on his opponent's materialism and lack of foresight. Basically, there is a good defense here. Black can just take the knight. And that defends the bishop. It also attacks this bishop over here. And the queen is still under attack. So probably white is forced to play a move like bishop back here. Black can exchange, and then black is just in fine shape, being two pieces up for a pawn. But, you know, Le Gal playing against an amateur, he might have still played on anyway. But he was taking a chance there that when he took that black would be distracted by the material gain of grabbing a whole queen and play that without too much thought. So besides being a cute mate, this actually does arise in practice sometime. And these kind of patterns are useful to know. If you see similar things, you want to stop and think about them. So let's show you another example. This one I got from Wikipedia. They called this sort of the natural version of Le Gal's mate. It starts off similarly, but both sides develop their knights first, and then the bishop comes out, so slightly different opening order. But it proceeds all the way to this point. And then now you don't want to take the pawn here because knight takes back, defends the bishop. But what you can try as white is h3. And this is a good move anyway. The bishop can retreat, the bishop can take the knight. But what black plays that doesn't work so well is black plays bishop to h5. And if this happens, now you have the trick that you can play. Just knight takes e5 again. And now this time if black takes back, it's not defending the bishop. So anyway, let's go forward first. He takes the queen, you check, and it's checkmate just like before. Now let's look at what happens in the other line. If black is on his game, he's going to realize, oh, if I take the queen, I'll get checkmated. But I can at least grab a knight, and I'll only be down a pawn. And so he plays knight takes knight. And white has to grab the bishop in order to get his material back. And then notice this bishop is hanging too. So black plays knight takes bishop. And there's one more trick you have to see here in order to see how white comes out okay. And that is the move bishop to b5 check as a fork. Checking the king and attacking the knight. So black blocks the check with c6. You take the knight. And white is a pawn up, and white also has a better development. He's got 2 pieces out, and black has no pieces developed. He's just made a few pawn moves. So this is a winning move for white. So if we back up to this position here, that idea of knight takes e5 with a discovered attack on the bishop and threatening mate at the same time, this is a valid idea, and it gains material and wins the game for white. And I found one other example of a game. It's kind of curious. It came from a completely different opening. I just thought I'd show that to you too as a way to round off this episode. Let's go find that. Here. This game was played in 1920 between an amateur who has the white pieces and Paul Kruger, who's a German master. This was played in Stettin, Germany. And black plays the center counter defense. And white takes, which is a normal move. Black attacks the pawn with his knight, and white defends it with c4. This is not considered actually a good move here. And the best move for white, well, there's several moves he can play, but in general, it's not a good idea to try to hold on to this gambit pawn. You should just give it back and play a move like d4 or knight f3. But this is an amateur, I assume, playing c4 here, defending the pawn. And black tries to undermine that. This is a gambit now, but it's a good gambit for black. Black gets enough activity to compensate for the pawn. So white takes the pawn. Black takes back and develops another piece. And this may look like a backwards move, but actually it's defending the c-pawn and opening a line for the bishop to develop, so it's not so bad. Black plays the move e5, trying to clamp down and get control of this square. The compensation for black in this gambit line is this d4 square, and also this diagonal here is weak, and black can occupy it and use it to attack the king in general. And so far, so good. Everybody's just developing their pieces. And probably the next move white should play would be something like knight to f3, just continuing development. And black has a slight edge, but still a playable game. But after black castles, white plays this move knight to e4, and this is a definite mistake. And let's see if you can spot black's reply. So if you were paying attention to the earlier part of this episode, you probably thought immediately of knight takes knight here, because you can just sack this queen, and if white takes the queen, which he actually did in the game, then you have the same mate. Bishop takes on f2 this time. Check. King only has one square to go to, and the other knight comes in, and it's mate. And you have that same pattern. These squares covered by the knight, These squares covered by the other knight, and these squares covered by the bishop, and the remaining squares blocked by his own pieces. So there it is again, Legal's Mate in another form with the colors reversed. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Next week next episode, I'm going to be back with another mating pattern. This one from Legal's pupil Philidor, Philidor's Mate, we'll talk about next time. See you then. Bye.